Hello, people. My name is Mohini Dey, and you're watching my very own talk show, What a Melophile Wants. Today, I have an extremely special artist who has been in the music industry professionally working for over 25 years. He has released 5 solo albums on his own Renaissance Man label, which drew international acclaim. Not only that, but he has also appeared on multiple Grammy Award winning and nominated albums. He's the current touring bassist with Kenny Loggins and has also toured and performed with Dave Weckl, Carrie Underwood, Michael McDonald, Stephen Curtis Chapman, Mike Stern, Scott Henderson, Jimmy Herring, and many, many more. The list just keeps going on. It's my honor and pleasure to welcome and talk to the one and only. Please welcome the incredible Adam Nitti. Well, thank you so much for agreeing to be a part of my talk show. And let me just tell you firstly how much of a big fan I am of yours. And I have grown up listening to your music. And my dad used to, put your CDs on our DVD player that we used to have as a kid growing up. And yeah, it has been a huge influence on my playing, and I've learned so much from you. So this is a moment for me. Thank you so much for.
Thank you.
It's my honor.
I'm first of all so humbled by your kind introduction, and you must know the feeling is mutual as well.
Oh.
I must say it's been amazing. First, it's an honor to know that you were even listening to my music, but it's been amazing to watch the growth of your career.
And I cannot stop talking about how much your music has impacted in your playing, because I love horn section. I love orchestral stuff, and your music is so that kind of oriented, and it's just mind blowing to see how you infuse every element. It's just incredible. I've learned so much just listening to your music, and even now, like I'm in Chicago, just driving around, and I'm listening to your music. It's so wonderful. Yeah.
Well, bless you. That's really kind. Thank you so much. It's so amazing seeing. I'm not going to ask you how old you are, but I'm going to classify you in the new school of players in the younger generation. And again, it's so cool. I'm kind of lurking from the sidelines watching and just going, man, that girl is killing it. So I'm so
God, that means so much. Thank you.
Love your playing. This is such a great opportunity to connect finally. And I've been hoping I ran into you at some point at a NAMM show or a festival or something, but we get to do this, so that's cool.
I know. I think I did catch a glimpse of you at NAMM. I think it was last year or last year. I'm not sure, but I wanted to come and talk to you, but I was like, hopping in and out of, how NAMM is, like you are like face of these companies, and you got to be there and do these short performances. And I think you were doing that too. So it was so hard for me to like catch you. But yeah, I've been a big fan of yours, and really appreciate you being here and talking to me. Really.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much. So, without any further delay, I know that you have had a wide range of achievements, having played with some of the most well-renowned musicians, but also your own albums, which has made a huge impact not only on me as a bass player, but several other bass players, other musicians all around the world. It's very hard to cover everything from the very start to end in one episode, but I'll try my best and cover the important ones for my audience who are really keen to know your story. So let's warm up a little bit. Let me ask you, how did music happen to you? Because I'm very curious about that, since we've never spoken this way before. This is the first time we're hanging. And why bass? How did music happen to you, and why bass? Did you come from a musical family, or are you the first one?
So my mother's side of the family is very musical. And when I was a little kid, I would frequently go to my grandparents' house. And my grandfather was a really successful concert pianist, and he also played the violin.
Wow.
And he was in the circle that he was in. He was very well accomplished, and so they had little posters and things around the walls of some of his performances and bills and things like that, playbills. And so my mom would tell me about those, and it was really interesting. And then sometimes he would play the piano, and it was really fun to listen to. He had a baby grand in his house. But whether it was through his direct encouragement or through my own sort of fascination, just hearing the sounds, I just kind of had an affinity for music for as far back as I can remember. Right. So my parents remember more than I do, I think, about the steps towards it. But my mother also played piano,
Wow.
and she probably wouldn't admit this, but she could actually sing really well. My uncle played the guitar, and we had lots of family members that were at least hobbyist musicians that were doing things.
Wonderful.
So I think the road officially began for me at 4 or 5 years old. I was given a toy acoustic guitar by my uncle, and I've got pictures of
Cool.
me just kind of, I don't know what to do. I'm just kind of rubbing the strings
Yeah.
in my hands.
Just playing with it. Yeah.
And my parents that following Christmas had bought me a toy drum set, which is,
Cool.
most parents don't want to start you on drums. I don't know what they were thinking. But I was learning how to play beats, and when they saw how much I loved music, then they decided in their minds the best thing to do was put me on piano lessons, because
Okay.
from their perspective that was going to be the most comprehensive way to make sure that I was actually learning something.
Right.
So I began classical piano lessons a couple years after that, and I did pretty well as far as I was just taking private lessons. So things like recitals and stuff like that were more sort of like privately put together. That was my first ever experience performing in front of people,
Mm.
just getting used to that. But when I started to get a little bit older and I became kind of preteen into teenager,
Right.
I was playing classical piano and that was it. And the
Wow.
music that I loved and I was listening to wasn't classical. To me, the classical music felt like a chore. I wanted to play rock
Yeah,
and,
a lot of information. Yeah, it's a good foundation, though. Yeah.
exactly. So my parents, God bless them, man, they agreed to buy me as a compromise. They didn't want me to quit piano lessons, but they got me a synthesizer. I got a Korg Poly
Wow.
61 analog synth. Now it's kind of, vintage item. But once I got that, I started playing in a garage band with some of my close friends who also liked music. And that's one of the
Right.
things that kind of brought us together was our love for music. And
Wow.
we were listening to Rush and Led Zeppelin and Yes and lots of what we consider kind of the prog rock music of
Right.
that day.
Mm.
And the drummer, who is still my best friend to this day, I've known him longer than anybody else. He lives in LA now,
Okay.
but his father was also a drummer and a jazz musician.
Okay.
So my friend George on the drums, he'd be the guy who'd bring in like the Billy Cobham, oh check this out, or the Chick Corea, oh check this out, stuff that he heard from
Yeah.
his father.
Mhm. Yeah.
So the first time I ever heard a slap bass solo was Baron Brown playing
Right.
bass solo on the I forget the song right now, but it was on the Billy Cobham Warning album, and I was like, oh wow, what's this? And I was still kind of just playing keyboards mostly at that time,
Right.
but fast forward to the next season, our bass player decided that he was bored with bass and he wanted to play rhythm guitar. We had another
Okay.
guitar, sorry. He just liked distortion sounds.
Okay.
And so I volunteered. I was like, "Hey, I'll try playing the bass." So he lent me his bass for a while,
Hmm.
and I didn't have a teacher. All I had was my recordings, my
Right.
records and tapes back then, and
Right.
I was
Mm.
listening. So
Yeah.
I was trying to learn. I didn't know my guidance on whether to play with fingers or pick was completely based on if the player on the recording was doing that. I didn't have any knowledge other than that. So I just fell in love with it. And for a
Right.
while I was trying to double on keyboards and bass, and I worked up this shtick where I could um, tap out the bass notes with
Right.
my fretting hand while holding down chords on the keyboard,
Wow.
and that helped to build up my independence. But it was also practical because when we played Rush songs that had like synth sounds in it, and I'm
Yeah.
trying to play bass lines, it
That's
was kind of a
incredible.
challenging
That's a gift
fun.
you have because without having a bass teacher and just naturally figuring out what feels natural to you, in your system, that's just it's a gift. Wow, that's
Yeah.
incredible. What a wonderful story.
And then after that, the rest is history. I stopped practicing. I got out of classical piano for better or for worse, and I just focused on the bass and eventually had some formal study down the road. But
Right.
yeah, been loved it ever since.
Wow, amazing. And what age were you when the first, everybody has that turning moment in life. Everybody has that one big door that opens up, and that leads to many openings. And what was that? When was that for you? What age were you, and what was it that was the big turning point? What was the big thing or moment that occurred to you?
I think at 13 and 14, right around there, that's when I was so passionate about music. It's all I wanted to do.
Right.
And I couldn't ever put that aside to the point where it actually caused me problems in school because my parents wanted me to go to college and get a backup degree, right?
Right.
Well, college is too
We've all been
difficult.
there, haven't we?
Yeah, I mean it's too difficult to do well in school if your mind is always on something
Yeah.
else. Not to
Yeah.
mention my brain is
Too
ADHD
much
and I'm easily
going on.
distracted.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
To
I,
have
I
that
just
balance. Yeah.
exactly. So I started doing worse in school, but I wanted to keep doing music, so I changed to a music major. I did
Wow.
that for a while. That was helpful and I learned a
Mhm.
lot. But ultimately, I ended up leaving college early after about 3.5 years. I left school just to go for it musically.
But
And
did you
that's
get
when
a degree though? Did you get a degree?
I didn't get a degree. I never went back. But what's funny is now I teach at a college. I teach at Belmont University in Nashville,
Right.
which
Awesome.
they basically look at my resume as my degree, thank goodness. And
Right.
that's how I was able to get into that.
Awesome.
But students ask me, I'm always honest with them,
Yeah.
hey, did you finish school? And I'm like, no, I didn't,
Me
but I'm
neither.
not
Yeah.
saying you shouldn't, and here's why. And I kind of
Yeah.
lay out the pros and cons.
Yeah, yeah. Even I didn't get a degree because I was already working and I was traveling so much during my school days. And I did my junior college, which is like the high school, I guess. And my dad was like, "Hey, you know what? I see you doing so well with music, and you're playing with so many people and everything. But it would be nice for you to get a degree for the future, for the long run, because they're looking out for you in case. Because music
Of course.
industry is a hard place to survive in, and especially being a woman in India, being a bass player, that's even harder, you know?
Yeah.
So he was just
Wow.
kind of looking out for me and being like, but then I told him one thing because I used to hang out with so many elder people, and I had this teaching from them, which is don't have an option B. Because if you have an option B, then you will not give your 100%, and you'll always have that back in the back of your mind, which will keep ringing, saying that, oh well, if it doesn't work out, you have this.
That's
So
such a great way to put it.
yeah,
That's excellent. And I had to prove that was proven to me through what I was just saying. It was like
yeah,
I really did try to serve both of these
right.
things, and it was very difficult to do.
I can imagine. Yeah, and being the youngest and being the only girl in the music industry, everybody was there was this kind of sympathy factor which was always there, and being like, oh, she's a girl, she's gonna be fine, or maybe she's not strong enough, and all that, and that just gave birth to so much fire inside me, and that made me want to prove to them that no, we're not weak. I'll show you. you know and listening to you, Victor, Jacko, Marcus, so many other bass players, and even so many drummers, because India is so full of the Carnatic world and Kanakul and time and all this
Yeah.
stuff.
What a
Um,
rich history there.
yeah, so I was always like kind of trained under the Carnatic industry, and that fusion happening with the jazz music and the world music, both the styles infused together in my playing, that kind of became my voice, because I had my mother who was a singer, who was a Hindustani classical singer, and my dad is a bass player, so music was kind of always floating in the house. And yeah, I think I'm the outcome of all you guys, of, foundation, because my foundation included all of you people, and
Wow.
I cannot thank enough for playing such a huge part in my life.
Oh, that's so
Yeah.
amazing. I didn't know your dad was a bass player. That's really cool.
Yes, he's my teacher. Yeah,
That
yeah,
is so cool.
yeah.
Wow, he must be proud.
Oh yes, he is very, very proud. Very proud. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Awesome.
yeah. Um, And who were your major influences? Because, like I said, you were a major influence in my life, and so many others. Who were your major influences? Give us a few names. Could be bass players, could be anybody,
Yeah.
drummers.
As I was saying, what the music I kind of fell in love with first was that prog rock sort of thing. So
Right.
early on, I was definitely trying to transcribe and learn ideas from people like, Geddy Lee and John Paul Jones, Chris Squire, Baron Brown, like I mentioned before.
Right. Yeah.
The jazz thing for me and being exposed to those players was later, not until after I started actually studying privately with another bass player, and then
Okay.
eventually going to school.
Mm-hmm.
And so up to then, I kind of had this sort of like rock foundation, and I didn't have a mentor, so much of what I was working on was chops and accuracy and
Right.
that
Technique,
type of
all
thing.
that. Yeah.
And I didn't have anybody really schooling me on things like tone and
Right.
phrasing and melodicism and improvisation. My improvisation was just kind of based on, you know, patterns and shapes, that I was
Right.
picking up. But when I started studying privately, my first real serious bass teacher was a bass player named Russ Rogers, who I'm still friends with to this day, amazing player. And he was a huge Jocko head, and he was really the person that kind of turned me on to Jocko's discography. And he was a great enough player to be able to kind of share the perspective of what was happening with Jocko's playing and actually show me things. And it almost a lot of players from my generation almost sounds cliche at this point. It's like, oh, Jocko was an influence, but you got to understand, it's like at that time, amidst the youth of the bass guitar and kind of what we were listening to, it was like there was Jocko and there was Stanley and there was Billy Sheehan. It was like these were kind of like the bass gods of the time, and that's who I was listening to as much as I could. So from there, Gary Willis was another huge influence. Two of my biggest influences on record, because of how much time I've spent and talked about them and coming up as a player, for sure would be Dominique DiPiazza and also John Patitucci, who's, for me, it was like their electric playing, just it modeled so much of what resonated with me in terms of melody and speaking through their instrument.
Same. Yeah.
Incredible stuff. And then also too, the other primary influences I've had, I gotta say, Marcus Miller. And for Marcus, it's as much of a compositional influence as it was the playing, for sure.
Too. Yeah.
Michel Ndegeocello, one of my all-time favorite players. I mean, I feel like I didn't really learn how to play good time until I listened to her every day. It's like just a masterful player. Jimmy Haslip. Even players like Flea and
Michael Manrin.
yes, Michael, of course. Yeah, it's just, but those would be some of the primary influences. I really just once I locked into my passion, it was like I was a sponge. I was trying to learn who are the bands, what do I listen to, who are the bass players, and I went nuts.
Awesome. That's so interesting. Now let's talk about your gear a little bit. What are you using for your sound? And what's this beautiful sounding bass that you use?
So my primary instruments are these Ibanez basses that I've been playing for a long time, and they built me when I first got aligned with them. They built a couple basses to spec for me, which eventually became production instruments. And so, so now the one is a 6-string bass. It's the model. It's a ANB 306.
Right.
And the 5-string is an ANB 205. Those, if anyone cares about the nerdy numbers. But those are my primary instruments, and the 6-string is kind of more of the modern sounding of the two. It's it's like it's a neck through, and it's got.
You prefer playing a 6?
Well, it's these days, I'll tell you, it's my time is spent pretty equally between 4, 5, and 6 because of being in Nashville and what certain expectations are with certain tones for certain settings. But if I'm going out and doing like my music, I'll play a 6. If I'm playing with other artists, more than often I'm playing a 5-string. And my Ibanez 5-string it's built more like a J bass, and it's it's like a slightly modernized version of a J bass, basically.
Right. Brings me to my other question, which is, now we're in these weird times right now. how were your days before when you were, back on road, doing the work, and now we have all this time to ourselves where we're home, just jailed. What do you do? What's your day like?
Well, this is going to look so opportunistic, but this is what I did. So this is my new record. I just got
Oh
it
wow,
yesterday. It just arrived for inventory, which I'm
wow,
so
incredible! I
excited
cannot
about. So
wait to
I
hear.
finally had enough downtime to finish that. So
Wow.
that'll go for sale in the next week or so. And it was just it wasn't something I did from beginning to end during this time, but it
Yeah.
was something that had been unfinished for a couple years prior. And so
Right.
I
Right.
was able to finally laser beam focus and go, well, every gig I have is canceled. I'd be an idiot not to take advantage and get this thing done.
Yeah.
But
No, it's always kind of like, we prioritize other people's work over ours because, that's on the line and we got to finish that. And we kind of just forget that, oh, I have my stuff too. And we got to give importance to that as well. But
yeah,
yeah, we put others before us.
absolutely. And if I do the other thing that I've been doing is remote sessions for people a lot more.
Yeah.
And it's like you said, that I'm providing a service for people. It's like that it'd be risky not to prioritize that for two
Totally.
reasons. It's not fair to the customer, and number two, I won't make any money if I don't get done.
Totally.
And I enjoy doing that. So that's a
Right.
cool thing. Sometimes it's a good palate cleanser when I've been working for hours on my record or my music. But yeah, I've been doing that stuff, and there's two books I started writing on one's on technique and one's on improvisation. They're going slowly, but doing more transcriptions. I'm trying to think more catalog oriented because I love sharing what I do, and I've figured out over the years, like, I haven't done enough of sharing through tangible things, besides the CDs. It's like I need to
Yeah.
do more of that because I
Right.
get lots of questions about what's your approach to improvisation? What's your approach to this? How do you get your tone? And
Yeah.
I'm finally going, man, I need to just do it. And so this was a great time to do that. But
Right.
I I almost I almost crashed and burned because this record, it's you've heard my other stuff before, some
Yes.
of it, I'm sure, and based on what you're saying, like, it's
I know each and
very,
every song, and I've learned and studied each and every solo of yours,
oh wow,
literally.
that's incredible. Okay, you
Yeah.
are officially my favorite person in the world. But thank
Yeah.
you for that. But this album was I purposely went a different direction. It's more of like a modern rock, prog rock kind of record. And it's my debut as a lead vocalist
Wow,
on
that
an
is
official
interesting. I would love
recording.
to hear that. Wow.
So I did all the bass, I did 90% of the keyboards, I did 90% of the guitars. I don't even play guitar, and I'll just be completely transparent and say I didn't really play the guitar as much as I punched in guitar. But it was one of those things where I started to write on it to get a different perspective. And the parts that I was coming up with, part of my ignorance helped me out into doing things that were, they sounded unique to me. And at the end of the day, with software benefits, it's like I could get it polished enough to where it was working. Now I had real guitar players like Scott Bernard and Marcos Foley come in and play some solos and
Wonderful.
really put the right
Incredible.
touch on it. But so much of the writing was done from there. But this added so much time and effort. I had no idea what I was getting into. So I'm so glad it's
I
it's done
understand.
now.
But
Just the
sometimes I feel like it's better to get back on the unfinished stuff after a while. It
Yeah,
just gives you another direction to look from, because of all the experiences that we have had, in those years, and that we think that, oh, we want to get back, but due to our, unfinished other people's work, we don't get to do it. And then finally, when we have the time and we get back to it, it's like a completely, because then your muscle memory is lost,
yes.
which is so good actually to write songs, because otherwise you're kind of just
Yeah.
stuck. And no one,
Are you more of a work when inspired person, or are you more routine? You can set aside time and be productive? What are you like in that way?
I love being spontaneous. That's who
Uh,
I am.
yeah, me
But
too.
I also at the same time, when my work requires me to be that organized, time-oriented person, I can be that too.
That's
Uh,
good.
yeah, I can be both, but I enjoy being spontaneous more.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I'm the more freedom kind of,
Right, right.
yeah, free-spirited. I love the space.
It's
Um,
difficult sometimes, isn't it, to just decide that I'm going to do something inspired. That's really counter to the definition of
Yeah, it's a
inspiration.
little bit of a pressure. I don't mind doing it for other people, but if it's my own work and if it's my own songs, I like to take my own time. Like,
Yeah.
and nobody's going anywhere. I'm not going anywhere. Everything's right here. And I feel like, some people say that the time will come. I feel like you got to make time for it.
Yes, I agree.
Any time is the right time. You just gotta make time for
That's
it,
so
and
true.
any time will be your time. I just don't believe that it will come.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, somebody told me one time, it was a fellow musician, and this was many years ago, and they were trying to encourage me by saying, "Oh, you got nothing to worry about. You have nothing but time." But that wasn't entirely true,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
time is gone. This moment is gone. This moment's gone. It's
Fact.
like
It's
you have to
right.
seize the initiative and not just assume that it's gonna happen, just in some indefinite time. It's okay to relax and let things happen naturally, but
Totally.
you don't
Yeah.
want to waste the time, it's
Yeah,
precious.
I'm all about saving time, and I'll give you one really funny example, and you'll see what kind of person I am. Like literally, I use granulated sugar in my tea every morning just to save time.
I know where you're going with this.
Like
That's
every
amazing.
second,
Wow.
yeah, every second is so precious for me. Every minute is so precious to me. I would find ways to save time so, I can be more productive and I can have more time to do more things, because there's so much to life. I feel
That's
like
right.
24 hours is too less.
That's right. Some musicians might think I'm crazy for saying it, but the truth is, at least from my perspective now, it's like there's so much more to life than music. Yes, music is a massive part of my life,
It's
but
absolutely.
without family and without hobbies and experiences and interaction with people, trying new things out, I wouldn't have my music, I don't think, because I wouldn't have anything to inspire
Totally.
me. As
Absolutely. That's such a good way to look at it. Absolutely. Um, Here's an interesting question. Have you ever faced any challenges growing up in your musical upbringing? If yes, what was it?
Wow, that's a great question. No one's asked me that before. You mean challenges to being a musician, or
Like sometimes as a growing musician, everybody has their own obstacles. Like, for example, for the longest time, as a kid, I had a really hard time understanding how to use the modes over
oh, I see. Yeah.
changes, soloing over the changes. And then I had to train myself and gather more information. And the more I did it, I got better. Um, for a good, I'd say 2 3 years, I was just stuck on that. Also, in India, musical knowledge is very, very limited, especially with jazz,
Mm,
study. And I didn't have any people to tell me that, okay, this is how it's done, or to show me, okay, this is the technique that you got to use. This is the approach that you got to take. Just like how you were mentioning, there was
yeah.
nobody to like tell you. Of course, my dad taught me whatever he knew, but he also didn't have a teacher. He was self-taught. So
Yeah.
he taught me whatever he knew. And then it was kind of my own journey. And having no music schools in India, it was even harder. But thank God for the internet, which kicked in after a while. I think
Yeah.
I was probably 16 or 17 when the internet kicked in, and or maybe 14, 15, and the internet came into the world. And then it was like, oh my God, everything's there. Now I can,
Yeah.
just lock myself into a room and get all this information and study. So yeah. So what was your like one challenge that you remember as a kid growing?
Yeah. It's funny. I didn't really realize this until later on down the line, and learn more about myself and in other non-musical situations, understanding how it negatively affected me. But my distraction level was so high that music for me was about almost like impulse. I heard
Mm,
something. I can be laser beam focused and transcribe something if I'm into it. But if I begin to get bored at all, I want to stop. And the way that worked against me was there were things I really needed to work on, but I would find them tedious or boring. And then I don't want to do that anymore. Let me play something fun. And
Right.
that slowed down, especially not having a mentor, that slowed me down in certain areas of development that I had to catch up on later on, before I could really seriously think about making a living.
Right. Right.
And so things like sight reading were totally tedious for me. And I had a good ear, which was a blessing and a curse because I could pick things up really easily.
Right. Right.
But you put a page in front of me, I'd get really insecure.
Right.
And I'll never forget, being humiliated in school, when I got really serious about wanting to do this, and I got into jazz band in college and stuff, and just it really exposed the weaknesses that I had as a player that were a direct result of my just not prioritizing or putting enough balance between the different competencies. So that distraction level worked against me. But now, having gone through a lot of different things and learning from that, I know how to better kind of trick my brain into getting into a routine. And I
Right.
know how to prioritize things. I know how to work around schedules and I've put things into place that can keep me on track. And so when I have
Totally.
very challenging projects that I have to prepare for, if I have to do a lot of memorization, because you can get worn out from memorizing like a 25 song set, which I've had to do many times in my
Yeah.
career.
Totally.
And it's like, oh my gosh, you go nuts after a couple days, for
Are
me
you more of
working
a
on that
studio
stuff.
person or do you enjoy the live performance?
Gosh, I it's hard for me to put one on top of the other. Every time I get on stage, if it's a great inspiring band or a great inspiring enjoyable situation, I feel like there's nothing better.
Right.
But if I'm in a recording studio and I'm able to be creative and they kind of just give me the green light, I
Mhm.
love the process of the challenge of figuring out how to complement things or
Yeah. And the whole
uniquely say
energy is
something.
different too with the audience and right.
Yeah, but I think they're definitely different energies. I mean, you
Totally.
understand this. It's like, you
Oh yeah.
you probably feed off of, the audience
Totally.
energy and
Totally. I
it
feel like
takes you
my
to a place.
yeah, it makes me feel more powerful in the studio. Of course, you feel powerful, and there are things that you would do because that's what you do the best, But having the audience really makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
At least for me, I don't know. Seeing them, cheer to me or calling out my name really, really makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
Empowers you and like pushes you to do even better, you know.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
yeah, there's some kind of strength that you start feeling. You feel powerful. In
Yeah.
studio, it's like four walls and there's one person, two people, or what.
Yeah.
Intimate.
So much of like the sessions that I've done in Nashville,
Yeah.
the overwhelming majority of them have involved some kind of reading, whether it's, Nashville number system or
Right.
in some rarer cases, just because it's just rarer here, actual notated parts. But you are now sort of the challenge of being a studio musician, or one of the challenges is like you need to be
Gotta read and write. Yeah.
yeah, you got to be locked into the page and
Yeah.
not
So,
get lost. And at the
mhm.
same time, the
Right.
challenge is also being locked in with the players in an
Right.
interactive way.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a very different energy that you have to sustain than being on stage, being interactive with an energy of a crowd and
Right.
listeners. I love it all, and it's all a challenge in different ways.
Yeah.
Too, because there's sometimes you can get so much energy from a live performance, you
Yeah.
can almost lift off the ground and become a little bit separate from the situation. So you gotta,
Totally. I see. I feel like there are two kinds of people. One are the kind where they can't read and write but have great soul and great ears, and then the other musician, they can read and write but don't have the soul. I would pick
yeah.
the one who has the soul.
Those are yes, I agree, because you can't communicate unless you have that.
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
powerful thing about music that I learn more about the less tangible aspects of
Yeah.
music the older I get.
Mm.
And for music to be a language, this is why people can listen to a player like just shred a bunch of licks and then walk away and feel like, oh, that was fast, but they don't take anything from it. And
Right.
then you can have another person that's playing two notes, dum, 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 and
Yeah.
you're just glued to everything they do.
Yeah.
Shouldn't the more
That's exactly.
challenging thing be more impressive? Well, on
Totally.
paper it is,
Yeah.
but you can also do shred with soul too.
Yeah.
But the communication does not occur unless it's spontaneous and real in
Absolutely.
most
And
cases.
I think that comes with a lot of experience,
Mhm.
playing with different kinds of people, different kinds of bands. Last year I was touring with this Japanese band called Bees. I don't know if you've heard them. They're
I
like this
have,
rock pop band.
yeah,
When I got contacted by them, I didn't even know who they were. And I was almost about to not reply to their emails because, firstly, Japanese, I've never heard Japanese music. And then, somebody from Japan contacted me. I'm like, okay, cool. And they sent a few links. I checked them out. I'm like, oh, they're really big. And then I had to audition for that band. That was the first time, first audition that I did in my lifetime till now.
wow,
Yeah,
wow,
I never did an audition before. That was my first audition, and like within 2 days, they were like, because they wanted to see like how I performed. They said, we know you can play, but it's just that we want to see how you perform on stage because it's a rock band, and they've only seen
yeah,
you with like Guthrie Govan, which is a jazz rock set or like a funk set,
yeah,
where we're kind of in the corner and doing our own thing, but they want that whole performance value and everything.
yeah,
And I got there and I see these, people in the band headbanging, and I'm like, whoa, okay, this is a different world altogether.
wow,
And I think those kind of situations really push you and make you, make you. It kind of introduces you to this other side or a new character that you probably had within you but never
yeah,
saw it coming, and now because you're being pushed, you saw this other character that you had in you, this other role that you can play and can do as well.
yeah,
So there are bands when I'm just grooving and I'm, at the back just reading and playing my grooves, no solos, nothing, just, fills here and there, very limited. And then there's this band where you get to be up front and running on the stage and, do your thing.
yeah.
So these kind of dynamics, I really enjoy, like the
I do too.
fluctuations. Yeah.
I do too. I'm one of those players that if I had to just do one thing and one thing only,
I see that. I
I
hear you
think I would
talk, and
struggle with that.
yeah, I see that you're the same. Like you like
Yeah.
the dynamics. Yeah.
I love being in a rhythm section that is just so undeniably grooving that
Yeah.
it's propelling everything. I love the idea of playing solos and expressing that way. If
Right.
I just did one or the other, I would miss the other so much, you know.
Right.
So,
Yeah. Now, in my earlier episodes, I've spoken about evolvement, development, and transformative individuality that, everybody's journey is so different. I want to know, how did you evolve as a person? And was it the same growing up to be a musician, or were there two different paths that you had to go through, which made you have this marriage between you as a person and you as a musician?
yeah, what a great question. Um, So honestly, the first thing that comes to mind, and this is another bit of transparency. For me, when I started playing music, I was in love with it. Like so many people, it's fun. Um, Music was one of those things that, in spite of my insecurities, it could attract people's attention. Um, I was like so many kids. I was kind of insecure, and music really kind of filled voids for me in that
Right.
way.
Hmm.
So I kind of look at my musical journey as having sort of like a there's sort of like this one line sort of drawn in the middle, and there's this
Okay.
before me, and then there's this after me.
Right.
And I won't take up a lot of time with the details, and I'll summarize this, and hopefully you and your listeners will understand. But that was a season in my life where music for me was something that I needed to get something from, right? So
Hmm.
it was something that I was drawing from, something that was helping to sort of nurture my confidence and kind of help me to feel like, oh, this is an identity for me, right? And when you have, I'm sure you've throughout your youth and as your development as a player, you've probably had people telling you all the time, because you are obviously very, very talented. Well, people, they tell you that and they're being positive and it's very, very kind and it's great. But sometimes when that happens a lot, you become the victim of your own positive
Totally.
programming, and it can move you in a direction where you lose a little bit of touch with who you are
Correct.
outside of the music, outside of the performance. And there is a there's almost like a slight counterfeit nature to that when you really break it down.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I had been playing for years. I'd been music was my career for many years, and I got to this place. This is back when I lived in Atlanta. Um, I I got to this place where I felt like I came to a dead end in my career. I felt like nothing was happening.
Right.
I wasn't getting calls. Like I wanted to be doing like everybody. I want to do bigger and bigger things. I want to do this. I want to be affiliated with this.
Yeah.
And I had this hunger and this drive to want to do more, but no matter how hard I tried to make that happen, it wasn't happening. Then I would watch my peers that I grew up with, and like a lot of these players, bass players or not, are like getting these big touring gigs. And selfishly, I'm looking at these situations going, man, I'm pretty sure that I have similar talent level to these people. Why am I not getting these things? And I kept comparing myself to
Right.
all these other people. And the more I compared, the more depressed and the more angry I got inside. I got bitter, and music almost became an enemy to me.
Correct.
And unless you've kind of been there, it's hard to understand because you're thinking, well, music is a joyful thing. How could it be your enemy? And it's not the music that's doing it. It's
Yeah.
your own thoughts and your own
Feeling. Yeah.
programming
Yeah.
that's distorting your view of
Right.
reality. So I got to a point where I was so depressed and angry. I was done with it because I felt like it wasn't going anywhere. I just threw my hands up like, God, I'm done with this. I'm done with music. I'm going to get a real job, a predictable job. I don't care if I play anymore. It's just too painful to try to keep pursuing something I love so
Right.
much and not having anything happen.
Yeah. Mm.
And that this didn't happen overnight, but that anger that sort of led me to throw it away,
Yeah.
that was the first time that I was actually able to surrender that whole situation internally. Because
Right.
up until that point, I'm trying to control it. I'm trying to make it happen. I'm trying to be in control of my destiny.
Right.
And, all the programming I got from things I read, it's like, A plus B equals C. Well, if you practice hard and you network hard and you're a nice person, then this is going to happen. And it's just natural. It's not that way in music. The music, there's a lot of things that don't make any logical sense. Some of it is being at the right place at the right time. There's
Right.
seasons to it. It's not predictable.
Correct. Yeah.
So when I finally got done with it I kind of let it go, I surrendered it. By surrendering, it did something inside me that changed my perspective where I could finally sort of like step outside of myself and look at, okay, who am I? Who am I as a person?
Yeah.
What is music to me? Am I playing music for the right reasons?
Mm.
There's nothing wrong with playing music for your own enjoyment, but when you start to depend on music to be your source of confidence or
Yeah.
your source source of identity with nothing else, and nothing else but the music, that's a dangerous place to
That's a
be
dangerous
because
place to be.
now your feeling of identity is going to rise and fall with the
Correct.
waves and
Yeah.
tides of all the changes week to week with the industry, right?
Totally.
So I came out of that period. It was very healing for me, and I came out of it with kind of like a new mantra, and
Mm.
that was, and I'll paraphrase it. Basically, what I kind of needed to tell myself and tell other people when I was sharing the story is, if you continue to base, how did I say it? If you continue to base your progress on the success of others, then you will never enjoy any true success of your own.
Yeah.
And it sounds cute and all that, but when you really think about that, basing,
It's very deep
evaluating
because
your
success
progress.
also means so many different things to so many people. Yeah.
Exactly. And
Mm.
so if I'm judging myself based on what gigs you got, if I'm watching you over there going, hey, how come she's playing with these great artists? Why can't I
Yeah.
I've completely taken the magnifying glass away from where it needs to be, right?
Right.
So that sort of that embodiment of that concept, it changed my purpose for playing music. And from that moment forward, I decided I was going to play music for the benefit of others. It was going to be more of a gift that I wanted to share
Sure.
instead of the gift that I could draw from, if that
Right.
makes sense, in
Very
a
well put.
selfish way.
Yeah.
And that changed my life in a lot of ways
Mm.
because of what it allowed me to let go of. Up until that point, I was so OCD and so obsessive. I got to make sure I practice this number of hours, but I wouldn't go to sleep at night
Right.
until I didn't have any security unless I went down the checklist of making sure everything was set.
Oh, wow.
I started practicing less after that happened in my life, and my
Mm.
playing got better.
Better. Yeah.
Why is that? Well, we could talk about that a long time. I won't do that now, but it had to do with finally trusting in the history I already had, the work
Yeah.
I'd already done, and
Mhm.
now speaking my real voice with my hands instead of trying to speak the voice of other players or speak the voice that I think people want to hear. So
Very good.
that in a nutshell is for me was the most transforming thing.
Great answer. That's amazing. Well, thank you, Adam, for being a part of this talk show. I cannot thank you enough. Every time I keep saying that, but
My pleasure.
it's made a huge difference, and I hope my listeners can take some knowledge and education from this episode. This brings me to our very last set of questions, which is the rapid fire round.
Okay.
And yeah, very quick. The answers have to be. Here's my first question to you. If you could switch to any other instrument now, what would it be?
Drums.
Drum. Me too. What is the worst compliment you've received so far?
The worst compliment?
Worst compliment, yeah.
Wow.
That's a hard one, but I'll
So
give you an
that makes me
okay.
think of like a backhanded compliment, right? So
Yeah.
one time, like I remember a long time ago, when I was so concerned with chops and all that stuff, I remember someone complimenting me like, "Hey, you got some chops." What they really were saying was, "You lack soul." So, so that was a
Yeah.
backhanded compliment. If you, in the context of when it was said, that you'd
Yeah.
understand why. I was like, at first I was like, "Oh, thanks," and then I was like, "Oh no, bummer." Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Somebody told me after the show, you're too good for a girl.
Oh my gosh, that's a
That's
okay.
a compliment, but
Right. What is the again
like,
backhanded? It's like, oh, okay.
yeah.
Yeah, that'd be somebody telling me you're pretty good for a short guy or something like
Really?
that.
That's funny. Oh God. What annoys you the most?
In music or just in general?
Just in general. Yeah.
It, dishonesty.
Dishonesty.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I'm a big justice person. I just can't stand
Okay.
when people are dishonest and lie.
Right. Last one. Tell my listeners something that they don't know about you.
Um,
Could be a habit, something.
yeah. I am a huge motorsports and automotive enthusiast, and I've been restoring cars and building race cars and stuff for
Wow.
many years, and
That's mind
that's my
blowing.
other passion is automotive, like racing and stuff like that. So
Incredible.
yeah.
Wow, that's interesting. Well, once again, thank you so much, Adam.
Thank you.
It was so nice talking to you, and
So
I
nice
hope to
talking to
meet,
you.
in person soon, and have a great hang. And I cannot wait to speak to you again. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. Have a great night.